Good day, ladies and gents. We are working on Unit 7, right triangles. This is day 1. We'll be talking about special right triangles, and we'll be focusing on just step 1 and step 2. Now, just giving you an idea of what's going on here, you are going to have a packet, and in that packet, there are 24 pages. The first page is the hot topics, and all the other pages are the problems that we're going to be doing together. So, pages 2 basically through 24. We're going to be doing most of them together. And then these are the pages you will be responsible for completely. So today we're going to be focused on page 2, 3, and 4. And at the end of class, we'll see how far we actually got. All right, so let's start with looking at our hot topics. So on our hot topics, we have two special right triangles, the 45, 45, 90 and the 36, 90. And those sides are XX and x radical 2. And on a 30, 60, 90, so the angles are 30, 60, and 90, our special sides are x, 2x, and x radical 3. And there's all these steps that we're going to be dealing with, but today all we're focusing on is how to label these. That's what we're going to be talking about. So before we even do that, what's so special about a 45, 45, 90 and a 30, 60, 90? So let's talk about that. So first of all, where did those labels come from? Well, let me prove it to you. So first, if we have two angles that are equal to each other, that means two sides are equal to each other. So if I turn this sideways a little bit, so my elbows are equal to each other, then my arms are equal. So we know that this and this are equal to each other. So let me turn this here. So if these two are equal, let's call this X and let's call this X. So the question is, what would be this leftover side right here? So because we know that's for a definite, let's just put that big old marker right there. So X and X. The question is, how do you find this other side? Well, if we have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. If you put your finger on the right angle, the two sides you're touching are a and b. So this is x squared plus x squared equals the side that we're missing. Let's leave that as c squared. X squared plus x squared, that is 2x squared, is equal to c squared. To get c squared by itself, you would square root both sides. And we are left with the square root of 2 and the square root of x squared is equal to the c. And the square roots, they cross out, right? So this cross out with that as well. And we're left with just square root of 2 times x, which I can put it in the other way around. X radical 2 is equal to c. So square root of 2, radical 2 means the same thing. So this side right here is x radical 2. Now let's just agree that you did not really care about any of that, none whatsoever. But have you now accepted that this right here is x radical 2? That's all that matters. So if we have x and x, the third side is x radical 2. And the way you can remember is that if two sides are equal, then it's x radical 2. Two sides are equal, x radical 2. All right, now the other one, I'm going to prove it again. So first of all, this started off with a 30, 60, 90. And this 30, 60, 90, if I fold it out, it was really a 60, 60, 60. Just like that. So all together, that's 60 degrees right there. Okay, so now I don't like fractions. So I don't want to make this entire distance x, because I would have to make that half an x just right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this the outside 2x. So this is 2x, this is 2x, and all this down here is 2x. If all three sides are equal, if all three angles are equal, all three sides are equal. So all those are 2x. And if I cut this part in half, that would mean that was x and that was x. So the question is, what is the third side? So at this moment, we know for a fact that this is x and this is 2x. The question is, what is this third side? So Pythagorean theorem again. So if we do Pythagorean theorem, if we put your finger on the right angle, the two sides you're touching are a and b. So this is x squared plus, I don't know what this is, so let's leave it b squared, is equal to the one side we're not touching. That's 2x, all that squared. So we still have that x squared. We still have that b squared. And this right here, that's really 2x times 2x. What's 2 times 2? 4. What's x times x? X squared. Okay, we're going to subtract x squared from both sides. And this right here, this is b squared equals, now there's an invisible 1 right here, right? So 4 minus 1 is 3x squared. And then we're going to square root both sides to get this by itself. So we have the square root and the square cross out. We have b equals, that's the square root of 3 times the square root of x squared. The square root and the square cross out, and we're left with b equals. This is just x, so I can put that in the front, and this is radical 3. So this missing thing right here is x radical 3. So do you accept that this is now, by using the Pythagorean theorem, we can find this? Good. So here's the more important part. You will never have to do this again. This was me just explaining why this is x radical 2 and why this is x radical 3. That's just me explaining. You will never, ever have to touch that again. But it's good to know where this came from. All right, so here's the most important part. We have, if two angles are equal, two sides are equal, so xx, and the last side will be x radical something. It's x radical 2 because you had two equal sides. This one right here, the fold is always between the 30 and 90. So what I suggest is with a highlighter or a pretty color pen, you make between the 30 and 90, you highlight that, and that's going to be the fold. And the fold is x radical 3 because, it started off for real 3 equal sides. So x radical 3, and the other two sides are x and 2x. The short side is x, and the very long side, which is the hypotenuse, is 2x. And that's all we're doing today. So let's go ahead and get started. We are now on page 2. So everyone go to page 2. So everyone's now on page 2. So on page 2, let's just remember where everything is. So right here, where the two, this is 45 and this is 45, right? I personally like to put my finger on the right angle, and the two sides I'm touching are x and x. And the leftover side is x radical, is it 2 or 3? 2, because 2 equal sides. And I'm happy with that. So we got xx and x radical 2. Another way you could have done that is if you turn it, your elbows are on the table and you're just making a triangle. So like standing up, right? So if my elbows are equal, then my arms are equal. So x and x. And then the third side will be x radical 2. Now with that, let's go and do our steps. All right, step 1, ignore your variables. So where there's variables, we are going to circle them and cross them out. And you should be doing this with pencil. Something that looks different from the black ink on our paper. You want this to stand out. Okay, so that is gone, and the y is gone as well. The 8 we leave there. Okay, the reason we're doing that is because our red x and our black x that we started off with might be different. Okay, step number 2, label. All right, so if we look at this picture from up here, okay, if I put my finger on the 90 degrees, that's x and x. So put my finger on the 90 degrees, this is x and this is x. You either write the x either above or below. You never write it next to it, because if you write it next to it, you might think that's 8x or times 8, something along those lines. All right, so I've only labeled 2 sides so far. I need a third side. And the leftover side was x radical 2, and that's right here, x radical 2. And that's between the 45 and 45, which will be right there. And that's it. That's all we're doing right there. All right, let's go to number 2. Number 2. All right, so step 1, ignore your variables. Boop, boop. Step number 2, label. So I put my finger on the 90 degrees. This would be x. This would be x. And the leftover side is x radical 2. Please notice, that this side was a black X, but we also labeled it as X radical 2. That's why we ignored in the beginning. Our red X and our black X may not be the same. All right, number 3. All right, step 1, ignore your variables. Boop, boop. Step number 2, label. So put my finger on the 90 degrees, right? That's X and X. 90 degrees, X, X. You write it above or below, never next to it. And the third side will be X radical 2. All right. Hopefully you guys have copied that. And now we're going to turn to page 3. Everyone turn to the next page. So we're only doing step 1 and 2 at the moment. All right, so now we're turning to page 3. Okay, now let's talk about the 30, 60, 90. All right, for the 30, 60, 90, between the 30 and 90, so that's where the fold is, remember? So the fold goes right here. The fold is right here. The 30 folds out to make 60 degrees, and the 90 just makes a straight line. All right, for wherever the 30, 90 is, make that, and that will be X radical 3. That's the fold. X radical 3. The other two sides are X and 2X. The short side is X. The long side is 2X. So this is the short side that's left over, so that's X. And this is the long side, that is 2X. All right, let's give it a try. All right, step 1, ignore your variables. Boop, boop. Step number 2, label. All right, where's the 30, 90? Is it on the top, the bottom, or on the left? Which one is it? The top, the bottom, or the left? Where do you think the fold is? The fold is between the 30 and 90. Where is it? The top, the bottom, or the left? You should have said the top, because there's 30, there's 90, and there's the fold. Okay, let's label it. So the fold is X radical 3. You either write it above or below, never next to it. So there's X radical 3. There's X radical 3. And then the X and the 2X. The X is the shorter side. Where's the short side? Is that the left or the right? So that would be the left. That's X. And the long side, 2X, would go right down here. All right, sweet. Number 5. Okay, the fold. See, it's a 30, 60, 90, right? So over here, that was 30. Down here would be 60. Okay, so here's 60. Here's 90. Where's the 30? 30 would have to be up here. And that completes 180 degrees. All right, so step 1, ignore your variables. Boop, boop. Step number 2, label. So we need the fold. That's between 30 and 90. So where's the 30, 90? Where's the fold? Is it on the left, the right, or the bottom? Make that decision. Is it the left, the right, or the bottom? You should have said the right. There's 30, there's 90, and here is the fold. All right, so we're going to make that X radical 3. And then the other two sides are X and 2X. The short side is X, the long side is 2X. Which one's the short side? Is it the top or the bottom? The short side, is it the top or the bottom? You should have said the bottom. So here's the short side, that's X, and the long side would be 2X. Okay, and number 6, step 1, ignore your variables. Boop, boop. Step number 2, label. All right, so there's 30, there's 90, so this leftover angle has to be 60. I like putting little curves on there. Kind of makes it more obvious that they're not side lengths. Okay, so step 1, ignore the variables. Step 2, label. So the fold has to be between 30 and 90 degrees. So where's the fold? Is it the top, the left, or the right? Where's the fold? Top, left, or right? Okay, you should have said the right, because that's 30, there's 90. If I go from 30 to 90, there's the fold. So I like to darken that line. Okay, that's X radical 3. And the other two sides are X and 2X. So the short side is X. Here's the short side. And the long side is 2X, which is right here. right, sweet. All right, so we have that down. You guys did really good on that. All right, so now we're going to go to page 4. So everyone turn to page 4. So everyone's turning to page 4. Okay, so let's go ahead in this top part. Let's go ahead and write down the reminder of everything. All right, so we have for 45, 45, 90, this is x, x, and the third side is x radical 2. For 30, 60, 90, here's the fold. That's x radical 3. The short side is x, and the long side is 2x. All right, so we're going to start with the 45, 45, 90s right now. So right now, we're going to pause, and I want you guys to do page 4, numbers 1, 2, and 5. All I want you to do is step 1, ignore your variables. Step 2, label. So you are going to label the x, and x radical 2. So pause the video, and you will have time to label that. Go ahead and do that now. Okay, hopefully you guys have paused. All right, let's see what you guys got. So we're doing 1, 2, and 5. Let's see what you guys got. All right, so it is okay if you got this wrong. Do not feel bad. I'd rather you get this wrong now versus the test, because this is just practice. We're going to find out where our mistakes are. So don't be afraid. It's totally okay. All right, so here we go. Number 1. So step 1, ignore your variables. Step 2, label. So where the 90 is, there's x and x. And the third side is x radical 2. All right, hopefully you guys got that one right. And if you didn't, that's okay. Learn from your mistakes and do better next time. No worries. We're totally cool. All right, so number 2, same thing. So that's a 45, 45, 90. So here's the other 45, right? Okay, so step 1, ignore your variables. Step 2, label. So this is x, and the longest side is x radical 2. And please notice I'm not crossing out the 28. I'm only crossing out the variables. Okay, and 3 here, that's a 30, 60, 90, so we don't want that yet. 4, same thing. And we're going to go down to number 5. All right, number 5. So step 1, ignore your variables. Boop, boop. Step 2, label. All right, so the 45's right here. So when I put my finger on the 90, the two sides I'm touching are x, and the third side is x radical 2. All right, so hopefully you guys did okay with that. All right, sweet. Okay, so now that we know what those answers are, now we're going to try the 30, 60, 90. So now what I want you guys to do is you guys are going to do the 30, 60, 90, where we have numbers 3, 4, and 6. So we're going to complete this page where this right here, this is between the 30 and 90 is x radical 3. The short side is x, and the long side is 2x. All right, so pause the video and do 3, 4, and 6. You're going to ignore the variables and label. Do that now, please. Okay, so you should have paused the video and done 3, 4, 3, 4, and 6. Let's see what you guys got. All right, so there's 1 and 2. Now for 3. Now, do not be afraid. A lot of people get these wrong the first time around. We're going to, just learn and just fix our mistakes. Okay, step 1, ignore your variables. Boop, boop. Step 2, label. All right, the 30, 90, your fold should be right here. So that is x radical 3. The other two sides, so this is a short side, that's x. The long side is 2x. All right, good. Okay, it's okay to get these wrong. You're going to get better as time goes on. So no worries. Just be patient with yourself. It's going to take a little time. All right, number 4. All right, so let's ignore our variables. Step 2, label. All right, so there's 60, there's 90. Where's the 30? Oh, there's the 30 right here. 30 would have to be here to complete the 180 degrees. All right, the fold is between the 30 and 90. So here's the fold. So that is x radical 3. The other two sides are x and 2x. So the short side is x. The long side is 2x. Excellent. All right, and then let's go down to number 6. All right, number 6. Step 1, ignore your variables. Boop, boop. Step 2, we're going to label. All right, so there's 90 and 60. Where's the 30? Oh, that has to be 30. That's the only angle left, right? So there's 30. So between 30 and 90, that is the fold. So those are the lines that should be darkened. Okay, and then we're going to label. So the fold is x radical 3. The short side is x, and the long side is 2x. And that's how we labeled everything. Awesome. Okay, so we labeled all those. All right, so that's a good pattern right there. And we had a nice little recap of that. All right, so now that we had a recap of this, let's go ahead and go back to page 2. We're going to go back to page 2. So everyone's going back to page 2. So now that we have a good idea of step 1 and 2, step 1 was ignore your variables and step 2 was label. We're going to go ahead and go to step 3. Step 3, 4, and 5. Step 3 is we're going to solve for x. So I'm going to finish these problems and we're just going to let it simmer overnight. And then tomorrow you'll have practice. But right now, I just want to go over these. All right, here we go. So we're on page 2. So let's actually finish these now. All right, so step 3, solve for x. Set the side number equal to your label. So right here, what was the side number? The side number was 8. So we're going to take 8 and away from this triangle, away from this, okay? We don't want it to be in here, so we're going to set this right here, 8 equal to, so it's, we're keeping this safe away from all this stuff, right? All right, so 8 is equal to x. And now solve for x. Oh, cool. X is already solved for. X is already by itself. And I'm going to put that in a little bubble thought, a sub problem. But I just like to say bubbles. Bubble problem. All right, now that's step 3. Solve for x. Set the side number equal to label, and we just have to solve for it. Sometimes it's really easy like this. Sometimes you actually have to put some work into it. All right, step number 4. Plug x into the other side. So everywhere I see a red x, or in your case, a pencil x, I'm going to replace it with the 8. So first of all, let's put it back in the original. If I put it back in here, it'll go right back to 8. So that's telling me I'm doing this right. If I replace it here, it would turn into 8. And here, now let me show you an example. See, I'm plugging in. See how it says 2x? I would put 2 and then I put parentheses. And then inside the parentheses, I would put whatever I got for x and then just make it pretty. Whole numbers go with whole numbers. See, 2 times 2, that's really a 4. Radicals go with radicals. This one didn't have another radical, so I just left it alone. This one right here, 2, I'm stuck with. A radical 3 times radical 3 is radical 9. And if you can go further, do so. Radical 9, or square root of 9, is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. So these are examples. So in this case, if I plug it in here, it'd just be 8 radical 2. And that's as pretty as it gets. Your final answers. This side was a black X. So sorry, this is your final step. Match your side links to your ignored variables. This side was a black X. This side also equaled the number 8. This side was a black Y. This side also equaled 8 radical 2. Awesome. All right, let's go to the next one. Number 2. Step 1, ignore your variables. Boop, boop. I'm just following my steps that I have right here. Okay, step number 2. There we go. Okay, step number 2, label. X, X, and X radical 2. Step number 3, solve for X. Set the side number, 25, equal to what you labeled as. And I labeled it as X. Oh, cool. It's already solved for. So I'll just put that in a little bubble thought. All right. Step number 4, plug in everywhere I see a red X, I'm going to replace it with the 25. If I put it right back in here, it'll go right back to 25. If I put it in here, I ran out of room, so I'll put it down here. that would be 25. And if I put it in here, that would be 25 radical 2. So all I did was replace the x with the 25. All right. And finally, your last step, match the side length to your ignored variables. So this side was a black x. This side also equaled 25 radical 2. This side was a black y. This side also equaled 25. Excellent. All right. And then number 3. Okay. So for this one, okay, step 1, ignore your variables. Boop, boop. Step 2, label x radical 2. Step 3, solve for x. Set the side number, which is a 19, and I'll write it down here. So 19 is equal to x radical 2. All right, so I'm going to bring this down here, and I'm going to zoom in. All right, now to get x by itself, I'm going to show my steps here. I'm going to divide both sides by a radical 2. So this radical 2 and this radical 2 cross out. So those cross out. So 19 over radical 2. The problem with that is we're not allowed to leave a radical in the denominator. So on your hot topics, I give an example. It's copy, paste, erase. You copy the radical, you paste it on top, and you erase the radical that was on the bottom. So basically, you move the radical to the top, you leave the number behind. So move the radical to the top and leave the number behind. So let's do that here. Move the radical to the top, so that's 19 radical 2, and leave the number behind, which is just a 2. And you would simplify that if you could. Like, for instance, see this 12 radical 3? If I move that, I move the radical to the top, I left the number behind. The 12 and the 3 can simplify to be a 4, and I'm just left with 4 radical 3. Or in this case, if I move the radical to the top, I'm left with a 5. The 3 and the 5, I can't do anything. So I leave that. The radical 2 and the radical 5, they can go together, and that just is 10. And then I have a couple of other examples. But right now, this is as pretty as it gets. So this is my bubble thought. All right. So everywhere I see a red X, I'm going to put 19 radical 2 over 2. So that ugly fraction right there. All right. So if I put it back in here, I'm just going to assume that it goes back to 19. And it does. All right. This one right here, go 19 radical 2 over 2. Because that's what we said down here, right? And then this X is also 19 radical 2 over 2. All right. And then your final step. Match your side lengths to your ignored variables. So this side was a black X. This side also equaled 19 radical 2 over 2. This side was a black Y. This side also equaled 19 radical 2 over 2. Excellent. Okay, now please notice, sometimes the red X and the black X are the same, but they're not always, because look here, this black X was 25 radical 2, and our red X was 25. That's why we ignored our variables in the beginning, because they're not always the same. And the same thing here. This side was, the black X was 19 radical 2 over 2, and red X is 19 radical 2 over 2 as well. So this case, it just happened to be the same again, but it doesn't always happen. All right, sweet. All right, and let's go to page 3. So now we're on page 3. So we're on page 3 now. On page 3, we have this right here. So let's go to number 4 here. So we're on number 4 on page 3. Okay, step 1, ignore your variables. Boop, boop. Step 2, label x radical 3, which is where the fold is, x and 2x. Step number 3, solve for x. Set the side number equal to what you labeled it as. So where's the side number? Okay, we want to do this away from all this stuff, right? So this right here, our side number is 32, is equal to, what did you label it as? We labeled it as 2x. Now let's solve. And I show a little more work than you guys. You could just go straight to dividing by 2. x equals 16. And there's my bubble dot. Fabulous. Step number 4, we're going to plug in x into the other side. So everywhere we see a red x, we're going to plug in 16. So if I go 2 times whatever x is, so that'd be 2 times 16, that would go right back to 32. That's telling me I'm doing this right, because that's the same number as there. Okay, if I plug our red x into here, that would be 16. And if I plug my red x into here, that'd be whatever x is times radical 3. My red x was 16, so this would be just 16 radical 3. All right, and your final step. Match your side lengths to your ignored variables. So this side was my black x. This side also equaled 16. This side was my black y. This side also equaled 16 radical 3. And those are those answers right there. Okay, and then, all right, let's go to number 5. All right, so number 5. Okay, so on number 5, step 1, ignore your variables. Boop, boop. Step 2, label x radical 3, and 2x. Awesome. Step number 4, solve for x. So set the side number, 20, equal to what you labeled as, x radical 3. All right, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. All right, we are going to divide both sides by radical 3. These cross out. However, 20 over radical 3, you have to copy, paste, erase. So move the radical to the top, leave the number behind. So it'd be 20 radical 3 on the top, and then you just leave the number behind, which is a 3. And that's all we get. And that's as pretty as it gets right there. All right, step number 4, plug in. So everywhere we see a red X, we're going to plug that in. So if I plug it back in here, let's just assume that goes right back to normal, which it does. So it's right back to 20. All right, this one right here would be 20 radical 3 over 3. And this is 2 times that. And you only multiply the top. So it's 2 over 1, right? So 2 times 20, so that'd be 40 radical 3 over, and you still have a 3 on the bottom. All right, your final step, match your side lengths to your ignored variables. This side was a black x. This side also equaled 40 radical 3 over 3. This side was a black y. This side also equaled 20 radical 3 over 3. And those are your answers. And finally, number 6. So number 6. Okay, step 1, ignore your variables. Boop, boop. Step 2, label. We got the fold, which is x radical 3. The short side's x and the long side's 2x. Step number 3, solve for x. So set the side number equal to what you labeled as. The side number was 9 radical 3 equals, and what did you label it as? X radical 3. All right, let's solve. So 9 radical 3 over x radical 3. You would divide both sides by radical 3. Oh, awesome. These cross out. Woo! These cross out as well. Yes. So 9 equals x. 9 equals x. Perfect. All right, so 9 equals x. Okay, so let's plug those back in. All right, if I plug it back in here, it'll go right back to 9 radical 3. Right? So 9, we replace the x radical. Yep, that does match out. This right here would just be 9, and then this will be 2 times that 9, which is 18. All right, your final step, match your side lengths to your ignored variables. This side was a black x. This side also equaled 9. This side was a black y. This side also equaled 18. All right, fabulous. Okay, so please notice that sometimes our black x and our red x are the same, but then sometimes they're not the same. So see how this one isn't. Sometimes it's easy to solve, sometimes it's not easy to solve. So you guys did a great job. Hopefully you're not overwhelmed. Just be patient and just trust me. You will get this in the end. All right, have a great, wonderful day.